I hate to tell you, there's pee in most water you're going to find yourself in, and worse.
Yes.
There's shit decomposing in lakes and ponds
Yeah.
that you swim in with your mouth open.
Yes. See, in lakes and ponds, like I'll pee in that water. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
I'll do that. Pools, not so much.
Yeah.
That I draw the line a little bit. But if it's a huge pool and I really gotta go,
Yeah, I mean, come on. It's technically considered a breach of etiquette, but so's taking a shit on the side of the highway. But when you got to do it, you got to do it.
Nature calls. Sometimes they don't wait for you to answer.
You got to wipe your ass with a Whopper wrapper. It's happened to the best of us.
No, that sounds very specific.
I mean,
did this happen to someone you know?
Not that I would be speaking from experience or anything. Let's just say it wasn't enough Whopper wrapper.
Well, that's why you got to order 2.
That's why you got to move on to the bag sometimes.
Well, I feel like the bag would probably work better anyway.
Oh, it's more absorbent, and I have the salt burns to prove it.
Hello, welcome back. It's week 89 on Out on That Line. That rhymed, and I didn't even mean to. How incredible was that? I'm here with my co-host, Alex. Alex, how you doing this week?
Geoff, I'm getting T-shirts printed up, and they're going to say, I survived my encounter with the beehive. We made it through episode 88 with the Beyonce album. We're unscathed. I'm ready to roll. It's the dawning of a brand new age, you guys.
It is a brand new day for Out on That Line because it's not like it was ignored either. That video did some numbies for us.
Popped some numbers quick. I'm surprised.
Yeah.
And it wasn't all pitchforks and torches.
No, and I think overall, because I think the way we approached it was like we're not knowledgeable enough to really like want to take any deep stabs at criticism on the whole thing. And it was overall a pretty good album. I mean, so there was not a whole lot to criticize. I think we were pretty fair in kind of how we went about it and just like talking about the back half of that album and how it kind of slowed down a little bit. But I don't think we said anything that was like out of line. I don't think anything we said could have been considered like egregious as far as the criticism goes.
No. We're never out of line, but we're always out on that line.
Oh, I like that. Should be a t-shirt.
Bing, 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 baby.
Yeah. That's on the front. We're never out of line, but we're always out on that line on the back.
Logo, print it, cut, perfection, t-shirt bonanza.
Yes. Well, I'll see that I'll look for that on the Redbubble.
Yes. Put in merch orders, you guys, and then we can even do like really nice screen printed stuff.
Yeah. We can make some stuff happen. If y'all want to see it, there's a lot of other cool stuff on there. If you go to Alex's Redbubble shop, if you want to see that, it is incredible. But thank you for the response to the Beyonce video. If you're brand new to us because of that video, welcome. And today we're going to talk a little bit. Well, wait. First, we have some news for next week, and this is exciting. I almost forgot about this, Alex. Megan Thee Stallion released a new album.
She sure did. Neither of us has listened to it yet.
None.
I got my dates. I got my Fridays all jumbled up. I didn't realize that it had come out. I thought it was coming out the Friday to come, but that is in fact not true. It is out.
It happens to the best of us. I barely remember what day of the week it is, as is. You could tell me it's Tuesday and I'd believe you.
Is there still a pandemic going on? I don't know anymore.
Who knows? I live in Texas, so I don't think it ever really was.
There never was one.
Yeah, as far as we're concerned. We remember the Alamo, but there was never any COVID.
Yeah. Beto O'Rourke is the pandemic.
So look for us talking about Megan Thee Stallion next week. But this week, we're going to talk about King Princess and her new album, Hold On, Baby. And so I asked you before the show, but I kind of want to ask you here too. Had you been familiar with King Princess at all before this?
Only in the sense that a couple songs came through on playlists. Like I like to go through the Spotify curated playlist. They repeat themselves a lot, but I find that sometimes they're useful as a jumping off point, like a little branch of the multiverse. It's how I found acts like Perfume Genius and stuff like that. So going through one of the playlists, I think King Princess came up. And I know I dropped it onto one of my little playlists of things I hear along the way. Couldn't tell you what song. I just know I liked it enough to put it on a playlist. And that is pretty much the long and short of my experience. But you told me you actually saw King Princess live.
Yes, and I had actually never listened to any of her stuff before that. But when we went and saw Casey Musgraves a couple months ago, I guess 5 months ago, this February,
Wow.
King Princess opened for Casey Musgraves in Dallas. And it was, so they had the band Muna. I don't know exactly how to pronounce that. I'm sure they have a ton of fans online. They're kind of like a smaller version of like the Beehive. So they opened and they were pretty good. Like they were just kind of really decent pop music, like pop rock. And then King Princess came on and I was like, now this is something, I got almost the same feeling I got the first time I heard Casey Musgraves. Was you can kind of hear the talent, you got to hear how she puts songs together. You can hear some influences, but there's also kind of a new spin on it. So I really enjoyed that part of the show. So other than that, I kind of had listened here and there since then, but when I saw this album had come out, I was kind of excited because I was like, well, I remember the show being pretty good. And, I remember hearing some of these songs live. And so I was like, it might be a good way to get back to our kind of singer-songwriter, kind of roots once again. And so I brought it up to you. We didn't have anything else going on, not knowing that the Megan Thee Stallion album had already come out and we probably could have done it for this one. But for me, I liked my listen through this album. I'm going to be interested to hear what you think about it. So do you want to get right into the songs?
Yeah, let's jump in.
Okay. So we each did our normal pick 3 songs. The first song, and it's actually the first song on the album, is I Hate Myself, I Want to Party. And this is one of your picks.
I thought that this, at first listen, really set the tone for the album. To me, it's kind of gave me a lot of expectations for what I thought was going to happen. There were specific lyrics in it referring to waiting for my body to settle into its shape. I'm paraphrasing. And that's one thing that carried through the album as a whole is lyrically and thematically, that's the most interesting stuff. It's a very well-produced, well-mixed album, but the real draw for me was the lyrical content and the lyrical themes. So this kind of set up those expectations for me. It's a very sad, sorrowful song about depression, and I think it also was not specific to the pandemic, which is a breath of fresh air, because I hit a wall on pandemic albums a long time ago.
Yeah. I mean, we had a few with the Haley Williams album was a pandemic album, right?
The Laura Jane Grace was a pandemic album.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we did several of them.
The Megan Thee Stallion one we did before, good news, think about this. That was one of the first, it was in the 10s or the teens that we did that. There's that line in Body. All these bitches been getting my through the quarantine. So it was referenced back then, and now we're about to do another Megan Thee Stallion.
Yeah.
Everything comes full circle. Time is a flat circle.
Yeah, absolutely. What a weird time to have been alive. This entire thing.
Like, you look at the Spanish flu and you go oh, I wonder what that was like. It's wonder no more.
Yeah. whatever you wanted to know about a past disaster, don't worry, we got another one on deck for you. It seems like that's the last decade.
It's that meme that the Trumpers love to use where it's Forrest Gump and it's the Democrats managed to bring back the Great Depression, the pandemic of 1912, and the civil rights riots of the 60s all in once.
Oh, they sure, man. I hate hearing that and realizing that it's all of those things have all happened in such a short period of time. A lot of them overlapping and a lot of them straight up concurrent and synergistic with each other. It's just, what a terrible time. I'm glad we don't really have to focus on albums like that anymore, because I hate to be reminded of all the shitty things that have gone on in the past.
Yeah. Let's just move into a bright new dawn where Megan Thee Stallion's talking about her last gynecological exam or something like that.
I can't wait. I'm looking forward to the songs that you pick on that album. I feel like you're going to put in a request to pick more because you're going to have too many options for the type that you want to do.
Oh, my brain's gonna explode. What did you think of this song?
So I honestly, I'll like spoiler alert, I really like this whole album. So this song, and I think it had a lot to do with the lyrics. It felt very personal. You know, the way that the lyrics are written, it's like, it's almost, this is going to sound weird. I don't mean for this to sound weird, but it's like you're in like the bedroom with her. You know, you're like watching her go through these things. You know, it paints a very good visual picture, and it just makes it so easy to understand exactly the emotions that are being conveyed. I do think, you know, some of the music kind of, I don't want to say bland because it sounds like, you know, because I don't want to go that hard on it, but you know, that wasn't the exciting part. I think I agree with you that the lyrics were really what drew me in, and it really probably wouldn't have mattered what the music was for me, like what the instrumentation and stuff like that, because it was just very interesting to hear these songs and kind of how she approached telling these stories. It seemed like there was never any, I don't know, it was all very balanced. You know, a lot of albums are either like full on attack mode on other people, Taylor Swift, or just like full on like hate myself, like Alice in Chains. You know, it's just, there's not a ton when they can strike a balance between those two. And I feel like this one did, that tends to make a very appealing album for me. Like that's kind of what I'm looking for.
I did not think it was a very cohesive album, but I mean that as a compliment because, like you said, it was a balance. It wasn't trying to be one thing start to finish. There was a nice balance between kind of the tone and the subject matter and stuff like that. So we agree it was balanced. It wasn't cohesive, but that's not a bad thing. If we're jumping to spoilers about our opinion of the album, I thought it was okay. I don't have anything overly negative or condemning or shitty to say. The one damning thing I will say is the pace. I was taking my notes and I was like, yeah, it was a little tough to get through. And then I looked at my phrasing and I'm like, get through. It wasn't like a ride, an experience. It's a 40-minute album, but I had a birthday waiting for this album to end. And that's a problem for me. So I'm like King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Here's my whole turn into being a total hipster fucking asshole. But their latest album is like an hour and 20 minutes long, and you could have doubled that, and I still would have been along for the ride because it's just so fresh and weird and off the wall. So like I can put up with it if you keep me guessing, playing with time signatures and shit like that. This was very straightforward music. Not bad. Pretty, well produced, well mixed, well executed. But it didn't really do anything to like leap off the page for me.
Yeah. And I think that's fair because I think if I hadn't, you know, I think for me, like specifically the lyrics are good enough to carry the whole thing. Like it honestly, like truly for me would not matter what that music was like. For me, I think I probably liked the music a little more than you did just because it was neutral on the music. So then it allowed the lyrics to shine for me. And so like net positive on the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I can certainly understand because there's a lot of points where I did wish that you got those like big time, like indie buildups into something like big and glamorous and like shiny, you know, stuff like Arcade Fire used to do, you know, just things that just were, I don't know, just had more to them. Things like the Killers used to do, you know, and well, the Killers still do because they still fuck. But like just something that just made it pop more. So I understand exactly what you mean by it not leaping off the page for you, by it not like creating a huge wave of just like positivity about it. Because while none of it was like a negative, I wish there were more moments, and I think she's absolutely capable. I mean, when I saw her live, that's exactly what she did. Is like, just there were these like big time moments in the songs, and it's like I think she needs those signature moments, and hopefully the next album will have some of those.
Yeah, hopefully. And I want more stuff like the next song, which is your pick, Cursed.
Yes.
So yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, so this one, the reason I picked this one, again, the lyrics, I mean, it's really like the way the chorus is specifically. Like there's kind of the background refrain where it's like, I love you so, you cause me pain. And then the main lyric is, yeah, and it's a curse to be alone. And then it goes into, I miss you more the more I grow. Oh, it's a curse to be your friend. But it's like the balance between, obviously they're like really have stronger than friend feelings for this person, but so they can't be in that middle ground. Like being a friend is the hardest thing. The easiest two options are going to be either like cut off contact or get with them. Those are the best options. The only option she has though is to be the friend, and it's very difficult. So it's like the way that she phrased that though is a very interesting way. It's not, I always talk about the difference between me and people that are famous for songwriting is that they can say things like that, but in a way that sounds like very introspective, very thoughtful, and not making it sound like, oh, I'm stuck in the friend zone.
Right. And if you're going to do a song like Friend Zone, talks about the friend zone, you got to do Friend Zone by Thundercat, which like takes on, like you literally think you are trapped in a space called the friend zone, and it's him trying to smash his way out of it. Like literally he's trying to smash.
Yes.
So like that's a delicate thing. And this is definitely not a friend zone song so much as it is the idea of the curse. And a curse is, to me, the most interesting curses are like the double-edged sword. Like there's this movie, I think it's called Lady Hawk, where it's Michelle Pfeiffer and some duder, I don't remember who the guy is, but they're cursed so that during the day she's a hot lady, but at night she's a hawk, and during the day he's an animal, and at night he's a dude, and so like they can never really be together. So like a good curse comes with a little bit of sweet and a little bit of sour. You know what I mean? The swan princess is a swan at night and a princess during the day, that kind of shit. Curses have a little bit of a just like a twist of fate flavor to them. And that's definitely what is going on in this song, where it's like, I'm blessed to be your friend, but it is so fucking aggravatingly difficult to be your friend. And it, like you said, it's phrased in a very conversational way. It's just like, hey, you look the same. Did you stop smoking pot and giving a shit what your dad thinks? That's very specific, but it's not being on the nose about a feeling. It's being specific about a scenario and letting us know how she feels about it. And there's a difference there. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. That's such a good way to put it too. Because it's just like looking at that, you can either like paint the scene or say how you feel about it. When you can do both, that's when you get into like some great songwriting territory. Like when you can convey the emotion and the scene at the same time, you're golden. And she does that really well. And that line, did you stop smoking weed or trying to please your dad? Like, goddamn. Like that was a burn, as they say, as the kids say.
That cuts right to the meat of the matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like such an innocuous, oh, did you stop smoking weed or trying to please your dad?
It's like the two biggest problems in your life. Like, damn, distilled. Gonna hit you right in it. I'm not gonna mince words.
It's just, I mean, this is the kind of thing where, like Casey Musgraves, right up until the most recent album, and even on the most recent album, there were some really good lyrical moments, but like she was mostly like had some very clever songwriting. And I got the same feeling on this album because it was just consistent. I was like, oh, that's such a funny way to say that, or that's such a like interesting way to say that, or a perspective I never would have thought to take, and I think just the way that it can kind of ease you in and out of all those things lyrically without like hitting you over the head with like, you should believe this, you should believe that, any of that. It was just like very nice to kind of like go along with her as she like just sang this album to us.
Yeah, it was it was a friendly album. You know what I mean? Conversational, intimate, friendly. And maybe that's kind of, as I say that, a point in its favor, is you wouldn't speak to a friend in these crazy flowery platitudes. You'd speak plainly. So that's, as I think about it, something that the album has going in its favor, that it's not try to put a hat on a hat, as we say.
Yes. Yeah, that was it. And I feel like that song, I mean, I think we covered everything we need to, but it just like, that was the first one for me that really, because I really love the end of your first pick, that I Hate Myself, I Want to Party. Like the end of that one, that was, they gave you that like kind of like that big time indie buildup, and you kind of never got it again through the whole thing. But then Cursed was the first one where I was like, oh, this is just like really good all the way through. Like it didn't take that end of the song in that build up to like make me perk my ears up. I just kind of liked it all the way through.
Yeah.
But the next one was my favorite one on the album, and it's called Little Bother. And they actually had, is it Fouché? Is that how you say the guest on this one?
I do believe.
Okay, so Fouché. Don't really know anything about them.
Nope.
Haven't really looked into them at all, but I enjoyed the song quite a lot, as I just said. So I loved the harmonizing on this song. It was just kind of like, it was a very almost like a Midwest emo song at first, like in the first verse. So like that immediately I was in. I mean, just like kind of got right into my little emo heart. But then the harmonizing throughout the whole thing and the places they chose to do it, it was just I feel like a really well-made song, very well produced on this one. I think this might be like the kind of prettiest, cleanest song on the album as well.
I could see that. And I love someone like Waxahachie. I don't love someone like Waxahachie. I love Waxahachie. But like I get shades of Waxahachie, which is a very at least her early stuff was like very lo-fi bedroom pop kind of stuff. And while this is more produced than something that you made in your basement in Virginia, it's got that same, like you said, that Midwestern sense of melancholy that stays grounded, which is kind of remarkable because do you know who her great-great-grandparents are?
Mm-mm.
Isidore and Ida Strauss, who were the co-owners of Macy's, and they died on the Titanic.
Whoa.
Apparently, she's not an heiress. She doesn't see any of that money, but her parents or her great-great-grandparents were a big deal who died on the Titanic.
Dang.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you might get a sense of like, okay, is she being truthful about not being an heiress? Because clearly, somewhere along the line, her dad was able to have his own recording studio. You got to figure some of that wealth trickled down and allowed him to do something like that.
Yeah.
But, okay, if we're going to take her at her word and say she never got a handout from anybody, it's pretty remarkable that someone from that walk of life could stay grounded enough to write something that is authentic like this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our favorite dirty word, authenticity, but it comes through in this song.
Yeah, it really does. And I think the way that the chorus is so simple. Like, and do you feel like you should? You could have tried a little harder. It didn't make me feel good. I was just a little bother. You know, it's just the way it sounds like almost like a nursery rhyme, like with how kind of simple it is, but it's a very like heavy emotional moment. You know, and I think because it's left a little bit vague, you know, there's no specific mention of a scenario in that one, that you put your own scenario in that. And I think that's what another great thing that a great songwriter can do is like give you the space to put your own experiences in their song. And I think that's something that she does pretty well, and she does it a couple times throughout the album. And I think that's what also helps make you feel connected to it, because it's like you get brought in those moments, and it allows you to like hang on for those moments where maybe there's not so much happening that to get excited about.
And it's like you said, I think a strength of it is that it is vague, which makes it relatable, because this one, there are a lot of very specific mentions down to the name of her actual lover, girlfriend, whatever you want to deem that situationship. Situationship. We'll just call it that.
Nice.
But so there are very specific references on this album, but in this one, it's kind of a more universal look at when there's someone that you liked who meant a lot to you, you fell out with them, you guys don't really talk anymore, you were left with a lot of questions, you didn't get the closure you wanted, and you're kind of like tiptoeing around that need. And there's a lot of insecurity being worn on the sleeve in this song. You I put up with the birds. This love shit is for the birds. Like, I'm always saying, like, oh, this shit is for the birds. So I connected with something like that. It's very, like, sweet and genuine and expresses a lot without being like, this fucking sucks and I'm hurt to my core. Saying something as simple as, this shit is for the birds is just this, like, very easy, relatable expression of your frustration. I guess I'll see you around. You know what I mean? It's just that simple. That's what she's feeling. That's what she's saying. Like, there's no closure to that. There's no, this is done. Thank you for telling me what I did wrong. This is done. Here's what you did wrong. And we leave with concrete closure. There's none of that in this song. It's just like still questions up to the end.
Yeah. And it was, like I said, this was my favorite one because it was just such a like kind of easy, gentle song to listen to. It was just like very easy listening. And just overall, I feel like just was so well produced and just the same kind of level of production that like Thundercat had, just like that, just very, you have to appreciate such a clean pop song. That one was just kind of perfect for that. The next one actually is one of your picks, Change the Locks.
Nope, that was one of yours.
I always do this, Alex. I always do this.
I'm here to hold you accountable.
I think the reason is because this is, there's a lot of, it's kind of got some boner jam tendencies.
Oh, for sure.
One. Yeah. So maybe that's probably why I thought it was one of yours. But the first line is really why I picked this one. I have had a million bodies and mostly it's been awesome.
But you're the one for whom I want to come.
And I was like, oh, because the first two lines, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty funny. And then the third line, I'm like, oh, she's just being very honest here. Very honest.
Because at first, there have been touches on this idea of, like, body identity. I read one blurb that said, where she says, I think her name is Michaela Strauss, 49% of the time I feel like a woman and I love my tits. And the rest of that time, I don't quite fit into that binary. So there's a lot of discussion of that relationship with her body. She uses whatever pronoun you want to use. As she says, use whatever pronoun. So for all intents and purposes, she has had a million bodies. If you're non-binary, you're not one or two things, right? It's a million different things. And mostly it's been awesome. And you're like, oh, cool. But then it hits that double meaning where it's like, yeah, I've had a lot of sex, but you're the one person I feel comfortable enough to like really, shebang with.
And so she's like very funny. Like during her performance, like she was hilarious and very like not kid friendly too. Like she was dropping the F-bomb like all the time from what I remember. And I'm pretty sure Casey Musgraves did too. It was just like kind of funny to hear that. But just the way that, I don't know, I feel like if I was writing songs, I would have such a hard time like writing something like that and just like putting that out in the world. I feel like I'd be so shy about doing that kind of stuff. I just have to admire when people just like totally cool with it.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, like, obviously I, have a big trucker mouth and a highly inventive, I don't know what you want to say, potty imagination, maybe.
Potty imagination.
I think they would, in the Renaissance, they would call me a bawdy poet. B-A-W-D-Y, a saucy minx. So yeah, I can obviously appreciate like a saucy turn of phrase and stuff like that. But it's when it's tinged with a sense of humor, because I've always said sex is hilarious. Like, it's something that can be uncomfortable to talk about. Like, even for someone like Megan Thee Stallion, who, as we know, can approach it dead serious, dead literal, or can have a sense of humor about it. The sense of humor kind of, no pun intended, makes it go down a little easier. And I think that sense of playfulness is present here. I know. I'm the worst. I'm just the worst over here.
I don't know why I popped so hard for that one.
I'm
That was
glad.
so good.
I'm happy I could do that for you. In what and the thing is, I wasn't even trying to land that one. I was just like, he's gonna pick up on it. You'd better just cop to it. But here we are.
Oh, that was. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for interrupting. That was just might be
No.
the funniest thing you've ever said on here.
I'm pleased. I'm pleased. I love it. Yeah, no, that kind of underscored, like, again, we're laughing about sex. Like, it proves my
Yes.
point. Like, we're laughing about it, and this is kind of what the song is about. Like, as she describes it, it's a song about dysfunctional, sapphic experience of codependency. The gorgeous elements of being in a queer relationship, the unity and friendship you feel together, it can be overwhelming, but it also feels heightened in all its good and bad. And like that's very obvious here. And again, it's that sense of humor that makes that clear to us. It's not self-serious. It's celebrating it.
Exactly. And so now we get to one of your picks, and I'm sure that it's one of yours because there's only two left and they were both yours. So the next one is called, and I think we're going to get no surprise from the audience here that this is one of yours, is called Sex Shop.
It is called Sex Shop. Jeff, that's exactly correct. But hot take, I picked this because it was an example of where the album started to run out of steam for me and some of the problems I had with the album overall. I didn't think it was particularly interesting, lyrically, thematically, musically.
Mm-hmm.
It just, like, so, like, the most worthwhile notion is in the chorus. There's something in the way my body's shaped, and it keeps telling me, you're a princess, you're a king princess. So it's kind of talking about that non-binary, sometimes I'm a woman, sometimes I'm non-binary. But it's just not doing anything more interesting than anything that came before it on the album. It's not really saying much of anything. It's very repetitive. It's just not that interesting of a song, and it almost feels like the title is like a bait and switch. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You get something
I
like
know
Sex
exactly what
Shop,
you mean.
and you're like, okay, this is either going to be some kind of interesting metaphor, or it's going to be something very literal and very interesting. Like, I wouldn't write a song called Sex Shop if I didn't have a very specific experience in a sex shop. And this feels like neither, which is why it's a letdown.
Yes. And I think because other than the first couple lines, there's not really anything that mentions what the song title is. So I think, and I feel like this is not one that I picked, and I had the first pick. So this is definitely not one that I would have picked. And this is probably, I think this is my least favorite on the album. I mean, there was a couple others that, I didn't really like that much, but this was the only one on the album that I listened to. And I was like, well, I'm not going to listen to that again.
Yeah. And there were other songs that, looking back on it, I'm like, I probably should have picked something that lit me up a little more, but I had locked in my picks at that point, and I don't really love to change on you.
Yeah.
But like Hold On Baby interlude was more interesting just because we've done a lot of albums that have interludes, and some of them are interesting and some of them are not. And this was definitely an interesting one because it wasn't like 30 seconds of instrumental. It wasn't 30 seconds of like dialogue. It was a whole ass song. It was like a minute and 45 seconds. It was a song. So that's interesting. Too Bad was an interesting song. Crowbar was an interesting song. I should have picked Crowbar, but I stick by my story with Sex Shop because it's a good example of what kind of kept this album from going over the top for me.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing to mention too, because I feel like we always pick the songs that we like the most, and if we overall don't have like the best opinion of an album, it might be a little confusing for people, because we really don't like to just pick something and just talk about how we don't like it. It's just sometimes I think it does show why the opinion on the album is the way it is because there was, we want to make sure we mention the drawbacks. Now, I'm interested to see what you think about this last one. And this is your last pick, and it's the last song on the album as well. It's called Let Us Die.
Yes. So, right off the top, this one features drumming from the late, great Taylor Hawkins. So that is absolutely worth paying homage. Um, so interesting little tidbit here. Apparently, she sends a lot of stuff to her dad being a music producer. And it's interesting. We run into a lot of artists who talk about their fraught relationships with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Or even like a good relationship, but where they keep a distance, like going way back to how in the Get Down, Stay Down, like largely revolved around her mother's immigrant experience. But
Mm-hmm.
her mother wasn't necessarily deeply involved in this album. So it's interesting to know that her dad played a behind the scenes role in the production of this. It adds a new dimension to me because it's got to be that hard to be that vulnerable around a parent unless you have a
Mm-hmm.
rock solid relationship.
Yeah.
So I just kind of found that interesting as I looked into that. I like this one in the sense that it was a good bookend to the opener. They had a similar way of starting and then building, like we talked about, that kind of indie build where
Mm-hmm.
it's softer, it's more contemplative, and then it kind of opens up as it goes on. And this was one of those for me. But what intrigues me here is you said you're curious to hear what I had to say. Now I'm curious to hear why you say that.
I really like this one. I really thought this was a jam. And I don't know if you saw who one of the producers was. Mark Ronson.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Yes. So he, tends to make like, some pretty kind of grooving songs. And I felt like this was one of them. And I think the way the chorus goes is like very, again, it's one of those like clever things that she does. If the only way to love you is to let us die, drive the car right off the cliff and let us dive. And it's not to say that I want to live without you, but I will if I have to. And it's just such an honest way that, she meant that she says things. But again, this is one that's vague. So you're allowed to like put your own experience on that. And I think that's such a cool thing that she does. And I feel like that's why, like, because her fan base is like pretty intense as well. And I think that's why they are, is because they're able to connect so well with the music. She allows everybody to do that. And I think that just becomes like a snowball effect. You get more people involved with the music, you get more involved with them, and it just becomes this, kind of trade-off that benefits everybody. And I think this type of song is one of those ones that's like upbeat enough that it will play at parties. It'll play like when people are just like doing things around the house. It's one that's a good one that's background noise. So I feel like this one is going to be, I don't know if it'll be the biggest hit on the album or if there's going to be like a massive hit from this one, but like this is the one that I think would do it.
It's a tragically sad banger. I love the chorus on this. It was the first thing that was written. If the only way to love you is to let us die, drive the car right off the cliff and let us dive. That's not to say that I want to live without you, but I will if I have to. Like, you love someone so much that you can see that they are suffering at worst or unhappy at best with you. And if you truly care about them, you have to let them go. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the oldest tragic love sentiment out there, right? If you love something, set it free. And if it comes back to you, it's that same sentiment, loving someone so much that you don't want to be without them, but you will tank this relationship if it means they'll be. You being unhappy doesn't matter as much as making sure that this person can be free. And that's like a very beautiful thing. And there's kind of a weird, kind of retrospective, woogie thing about Taylor Hawkins being featured on a song called Let Us Die.
Mm-hmm.
Totally unintentional. It's an absolute coincidence.
Yeah.
But you kind of look at it from that lens as well. Like, it's not like, oh, King Princess and Taylor Hawkins loved each other, but it's sometimes in your heart you have to you lose someone close to you. You have to let them go. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And not like forget about them or stop loving them, but you have to let that loss stop dominating your every thought because they wouldn't want you to do that.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
for me, the inclusion of Taylor Hawkins on a personal level changed that meaning for me as well, where it's like you can love this person, you always will, but they want you to live your life to the fullest. So if the way that you love them is to go live your life fully and to create that separation, then you do it with love for that person and love for yourself. And I think it's a beautiful way to end a very personal, introspective album that, again, musically just didn't do a lot to get me fluffy. But it was very worthwhile. I would go ahead and say this is a stream. You may not get much out of it. You may think it's wonderful. I can't really... I'm not so passionate about it that I can say you got to go out and listen to it or stay away at all costs. Therefore, if I can't give a solid recommendation, you got to listen to it and you have to decide for yourself, because I think a lot of this one is left up to personal interpretation.
Yes, and I would absolutely agree with that. I think this song was a perfect way to end it. I think it was the right way to do it. And I'm a sucker for sequencing, so I'm glad when artists pick a good song to end an album. But I'm gonna definitely say stream it on this one. I think if you already are a fan of, like, you know, kind of the indie rock or that kind of like bedroom pop sort of sound, if you like Mitski or Julian Baker or, you know, people like that, then I think you're gonna find some things that you like in this album. You know, I think it's got a lot of elements. I also heard a lot of like churches in this one on some of the songs that were very like synth heavy. And for me, I think it's something that she really did a good job of, like, mixing, you know, the kind of real like singer-songwriter type of stuff, and then also bringing in, you know, the more, you know, kind of synth heavy, more danceable kind of tones. And so, yeah, absolutely stream it on this one. Make sure that you go check out our YouTube. And is there going to be anything new coming out on that, Alex?
Why, Geoff, that's exactly correct. There is going to be something new on the YouTube by the time you're hearing this episode. We will undoubtedly have another reaction video up there. We have a fuck ton of reaction videos up there. We have our currently on hiatus singles series, which I would love to get into. That's more of a deep dive. I'm going to get back to those. We have episodes of the podcast. We have little tricks and treats and guest appearances and fun features. We got all kinds of stuff on the YouTube. The YouTube is where the main action is happening. So make sure that you're subscribed. You have your notifications turned on. You can find us at youtube.com/C/out on that line. Again, that is youtube.com/C/out on that line. Make sure you join the revolution. We're 332 subscribers and strong, still growing, thousands of views. Bam, unstoppable, freight train from hell. I get to end this episode, so before I go any further, I'm just going to say, until next time.